Tourists walk these places every single day, smiling for photos, buying souvenirs, and never once realizing what really happened right beneath their feet. These landmarks are printed on postcards, taught in schools, and promoted as symbols of pride, but there's a darker truth hiding behind the stone, steel, and stories. What you're about to hear isn't the version told on guided tours, and once you know it, you'll never look at these famous American landmarks the same way again. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why so many details were quietly left out, and why some truths were buried on purpose. Welcome back to the Daily Dig, where we uncover the stories history tried to forget. Let's start with the Statue of Liberty, one of the most recognizable symbols of freedom in the world. She stands tall in New York Harbor, holding a torch meant to represent hope and opportunity. But what most visitors are never told is that liberty rose during a time when millions of Americans were anything but free. When the statue was unveiled in 1886, segregation was law, Native Americans were being forced onto reservations, and Chinese immigrants were banned from citizenship. For many arriving immigrants, the first thing they saw was liberty's torch, but the reality waiting for them was brutal labor, overcrowded tenements, and deep discrimination. Even darker, the statue's pedestal was partly funded by newspaper campaigns that excluded Black Americans from public life, and the chains at her feet, meant to symbolize broken oppression, were quietly minimized so tourists wouldn't ask too many questions. Now look at Mount Rushmore, carved into the Black Hills of South Dakota. To many, it represents democracy and leadership, but to the Lakota Sioux, it represents stolen land. The Black Hills were sacred territory, guaranteed to the Sioux by treaty, until gold was discovered. The U.S. government broke its own agreement, seized the land, and later carved 4 presidents directly into a mountain that held spiritual meaning. No consent was ever given. To this day, many Native Americans see Mount Rushmore not as a monument, but as a permanent reminder of betrayal, erasure, and cultural destruction. Tourists snap photos, unaware that this national treasure stands on land taken by force. Before we continue, if you appreciate stories that go deeper than textbooks and travel brochures, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the Daily Dig. It helps this channel grow and ensures more hidden history makes it to the surface. Next, consider the White House, the most powerful address in America. It's often described as a symbol of democracy, but its foundations were laid by enslaved people. From quarrying stone to constructing walls, enslaved African Americans provided much of the labor that built the executive mansion. This fact was rarely acknowledged for generations. While presidents spoke of liberty inside its rooms, the very building stood as proof of a system that denied freedom to millions. The irony is impossible to ignore, yet most tours barely mention it, if at all. Then there's Central Park, an oasis in the middle of New York City. It feels peaceful, almost untouched, but before it became a park, it was home to a thriving Black community called Seneca Village. Families owned land, built churches, and created a stable neighborhood. In the 1850s, the city declared the area unsuitable, forced residents out through eminent domain, and erased the village almost entirely. Today, joggers and tourists pass over the same ground, unaware they're walking on the remains of a destroyed community that was simply inconvenient to powerful interests. The Golden Gate Bridge is another postcard favorite, admired for its beauty and engineering, but it also carries a grim reputation as one of the most common suicide sites in the world. For decades, officials avoided discussing this reality, fearing it would damage the bridge's image. Families of victims fought for years to get safety barriers installed, while authorities quietly downplayed the numbers. Beneath the elegance of the structure lies a history of silence, denial, and lives lost that tourists are rarely encouraged to think about. At Gettysburg, visitors are told about bravery and sacrifice, but the ground itself is soaked in suffering. Over 50,000 soldiers were killed, wounded, or missing in just 3 days. Many bodies were buried hastily, sometimes in shallow graves, and farmers later found bones while plowing their fields. Locals reported screams and groans in the nights following the battle as wounded soldiers were left behind. Even today, Gettysburg is considered one of the most haunted places in America, not because of ghost stories, but because the trauma never truly left. Alcatraz Island is marketed as a thrilling prison experience, but its darker chapter began long before criminals were locked inside. The island was first used to imprison Native Americans who resisted U.S. policies. Later, inmates were subjected to extreme isolation, freezing cells, and psychological punishment. The infamous hole wasn't just uncomfortable, it was designed to break people mentally. While tourists laugh at the idea of a rock, former prisoners described it as a place meant to erase identity. Even Disneyland, often called the happiest place on earth, has a shadowed past few people talk about. The land it sits on was once orange groves worked by low-paid laborers, many of whom lost their livelihoods as the area transformed. Inside the park, strict image control hides employee exhaustion, underground tunnels keep workers invisible, and anything that disrupts the fantasy is swiftly removed. The magic works because reality is carefully buried beneath it. As we reach the end, here's the uncomfortable truth. These landmarks aren't just places, they're stories, and stories can be edited. What tourists are never told often matters more than what's proudly displayed. History isn't just about celebrating achievements, it's about understanding the cost at which they came. If any of these stories surprised you, drop a comment and let me know which landmark changed the way you see America the most. And if you think more people should hear the full story, share this video so the truth doesn't stay hidden. This is the Daily Dig, and sometimes, digging deeper means facing what was buried for a reason.